Well, Dan, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
So let's begin our journey before we get into your work. I always begin with this question. 6 years ago, the pandemic was changing all of our lives. How did you get
Yes,
through that era, and how has it changed the way that you live and do work today?
that's a great question. So back then, wow, that was 6 years ago. Geez, couple
Wild.
lifetimes it feels like, right?
Yes.
So back then it was a big transition time. So at the time I was the kind of the chemistry department lead for one of the local community colleges. Um, and I also owned a martial arts school. So when in Oklahoma City, that was also when that was the big moment of this is a problem. It was the Friday before spring break. And earlier that day in our faculty senate meeting, the university president looks at all of us and goes, "Oh, so do you guys think this COVID thing's going to be a big deal? Like, what should we have anything ready to go?" And literally that night is when they shut down the first Thunder game because a couple of the players had COVID. And from there, it was yes, we were at with our martial arts school, we had our plans A, B, and C ready to go. And we ended up switching completely to virtual classes. So we were able to keep our team, we were able to keep everything else. But inside the dojo, I mean, it was just the three of us running classes like Denise Austin style workout video from like the late 80s, early 90s. And we had one of our instructors on a giant TV we had hooked up to a Zoom meeting where we had it in a giant gallery view, and they would just write on a whiteboard, here's this kid's doing a great job with their base. This kid's doing a great job with their guard. And so it would let us do kind of an individual customized shout out, which was a ridiculous part of the kind of a ridiculous time to do it all in. The other side of that with teaching, it was forced to go everything online. Um, and we ended up filming a whole bunch of labs, creating an entire online chemistry curriculum. And in the span of that year, I really got burned out with teaching because the universities had no idea how to support or had the budgets to support in the right way because nobody really knew what they needed. And honestly, because of the pandemic, my life changed because that's when I started applying for jobs outside of the teaching industry. So my PhD is in organic chemistry, and I started working with the federal government then. I got hired on in June of 2021 to oversee the chemical compatibility programs for the nuclear waste programs at the national labs. So 6 years ago, COVID changed how we thought martial arts had to be done. It changed how I thought teaching had to be done. And it made me realize I don't want to be a teacher anymore. So I shifted over and kind of found a new home in the nuclear waste industry. And I've absolutely loved it.
So, what I want to know is if I put you in front of 12 or 13-year-olds today and you had to synthesize what you do for a living today and make it make sense to their brains, how do you explain on career day what you do for a living?
Ooh, that's a great question. I do a lot of things. One, I show people how awesome they are through martial arts. I teach great martial arts classes, and I make sure that the business is able to help support the community by keeping track of their finances. And I also help keep the environment clean because a lot of the nuclear waste programs across the country are doing important work and trying to make the environment sustainable and recoup a lot of it from some of the poor treatment that came up from it over, in the probably between the 40s and the 80s. And so what I do is I make sure that waste can get from where it's dangerous to people to a place where it's safe for people without uh, without being a harm to anybody else along the way.
S-
And lastly, yeah, so
No,
go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead. No, you're good. No, you're good.
Oh, and it turns out that I wear one more hat too. I'm also kind of a contract CFO, and I help other businesses keep their money nice and tidy and help them grow their businesses so they can continue to support their families and communities too.
So, what did you want to be when you were that age? What was your dream job?
Oh, when I was eight,
Well, in that 12-year-old range, or that when you were in grade
oh,
school.
oh, no, I totally wanted to be like a Power Ranger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what got me into martial arts as a kid. Um, and and as I started to grow up, growing up a little bit, hit the high school range, it's like, man, I love science. And I thought I loved teaching, and I did for a while. It just made it so there's a natural progression where I shifted out of teaching and did something a little more powerful from there.
So take me back to where are you originally from Illinois?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay. So take me back to your beginnings. What were the seeds that were planted that got you in to martial arts, that gave you this business acumen to teach? It's kind of an eclectic mix of
It is.
occupations. How did that happen?
Um, that's a great question. Let's see. So obviously, we've talked about the martial arts piece, but what started off as me thinking I was training to go be a Power Ranger one day turned into me really being curious about the universe and asking, why do things behave that way? How are these things connected together? How do they work together? What happens when we start to change some things? Um, and math and science always made a lot of sense to me because it felt like you were telling a story about the universe. Um, and I always liked helping out. And I found that, I was really good at explaining things to the other students in my class or when the teacher wasn't great at doing it. And I found that I could connect with them on a different level. And
So who's
so from there, I thought I wanted to really jump into teaching, and I was right for a long time, for a lot of years. It really was my passion, and in a lot of ways, it still is. Because instead of teaching science, now I teach about money.
yeah. So
Yeah.
who's been your inspirational forces? Who have you looked up to? Who have you emulated that's allowed you to navigate and evolve to where you're at in your career right now?
I'd have to say there's kind of two people in my life that have been really influential. The first one is a guy named Mike Dillard. He was the president and founder of Century Martial Arts, and they started up. And I love his backstory because he said, well, originally, I saw people showing up to these competitions and martial arts with these really terrible uniforms. They didn't sound great. And he said, so I just started selling uniforms out of the back of my van at all the competitions I went to afterwards as it's like a bit of a side hustle. Um, and he said, then I would start, getting in the ring and would want to really drive up my uniform sales. So I would get in and purposely rip people's uniforms in the middle of a match. So they'd have to come buy one from me afterwards. Um, and from there, he really took it into pretty much the world's leading martial arts equipment manufacturer. They run everything from uniforms to weapons to bags. Um, and I love what he does because of his martial arts mindset. He always keeps a beginner's mind genuinely and is very humble, even though he is arguably one of the most successful individuals I've ever met. Um, And then the second would have to be one of my grad school mentors, um, Ken Nicholas. He did a lot of kind of pioneering work in a particular field of chemistry called organometallics, where you fused metals with some organic compounds, kind of an easy way to make it happen. And he did a lot of work in catalysts that had never been done before. Um, and I really appreciated his efforts because he always framed the approach to it and said, don't think about it in terms of here's what you want to say, here's the evidence, and here's why it's supported. It's like, in school, we're always taught like make your claim, here's the thing that backs it up, and here's how it backs it up. He said you go the other way around. You ask the question, you take the evidence, you say why the evidence connects these two things together, and then you come up with a claim. And once I started thinking about um, how that framework, it started me down a whole path of in my business, my martial arts school that we opened up. What two things are connected? How does all of how does one thing lead to another? What story is hiding inside of the data set? And so he really taught me to take a chemist perspective and apply it to my business and ask questions and collect data, run experiments, and find the pieces that connect together. And once I really intuited that and did a deep dive into it, we ended up growing by about 60 something, 65-ish% over the span of a year
Wow.
because I had those insights and knew what pieces affected which.
So I'm curious in the realm of martial arts, for a lot of us that have not been in that world,
Hmm.
we have seen it through movies and TV shows and all of that. What's your favorite depiction of martial arts in movies? Like sometimes it's inaccurate, sometimes it's a little too much, but what movie has nailed it?
Hmm. That's a that's honestly a great question. And I haven't really found a great example
Okay.
in movies of what the experience is really like because just like real, the things you see in movies are the 2 minute training montage where they've got like Eye of the Tiger playing
Uh-huh.
in the background. You see them like starting off with this really terrible kick, and they'll do some push-ups and some leg stretches, and then it gets a little better. They'll do like two more exercises, and it gets a little better. And it sets this unrealistic expectation that you're going to become a master in the span of, whatever a montage takes, right?
Yeah.
Um, but in reality, like I find that it's oftentimes like the things that you just have to keep going with. Um, and I will say, like, probably the most realistic martial arts, not necessarily the training side, but the end result side of it, came from when Netflix did their Daredevil TV show.
Okay.
Oftentimes, when you see a fight scene, it's three, four hits, and all of a sudden somebody's knocked out and unconscious. But with Daredevil, it was, hey, you couldn't take on more than two to three people at a time if you were really good at a set of weapons, and it would take you 3 or 4 rounds with each person before they would finally stop.
Yeah.
And like that, I think that was some great martial arts work in that TV show.
Very nice. So let me
Yeah,
ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that might have this mix of being in the martial arts world or being in the business world kind of together that you would like to talk to that might help you on your journey, anybody that's fascinating, is there anybody you would like to meet that's alive today?
when he's kind of big on the digital marketing side of the planet, and marketing for kind of small business world. His name is Russell Brunson.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about his backstory is he was naturally curious and said, "Can we do it?" And he used a lot of the same discipline and skills and trials and tribulations that he had as a wrestler growing up. So, somewhat adjacent martial arts field. Um, but he ended up, trying to sell potato guns is kind of one of the first stories he goes out with and says, "All right, well, we'll sell you a DVD on how to build your own potato gun, and it'll be this much." And he said the first, however many times he tried, he failed. And it's just like in martial arts. When you're trying something new, when you're trying a new technique, and even when you're trying it against the beginners, it's not always going to work. It's not always going to get you the results you want, and you have to go back to the drawing board. Um, and his mentality and mindset, like, yeah, I'd love to sit down and have beer with Russell Brunson.
Yeah. So the one thing that can change the trajectory of our lives, I mean, like a teacher, can do something to a student and change the way that they think and the way that they live their lives. In your timeline, what's one of the nicest things that somebody's done for you that's changed the way that you either feel empathy or the way that you do things in your life?
That's a great question. Um, yeah, um, it's always something special when somebody really successful says that they believe in you. Um, and one moment when that happened was actually with Mike Dillard, the gentleman I was talking about earlier with one of my role models. We were in the middle of a martial arts class, training with him one day, and he just looked at me and said, "Well, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about it? What do you mean? You're you've you've already thought about this 50 times through. What do you mean? What do I think about it?" He goes, "No, your belt's as black as mine is, kid. What what do you think?" And that kind of broke my brain for a minute, honestly. Because oftentimes, in the martial arts world, like you'll see a lot of really high rank instructors not necessarily be arrogant about it, but say, no, you're coming to me for a reason. You're paying me to learn from me. This is how I do it. So do it my way and figure it out. Not, hey, you're up here training with me. You're really good at this and you think differently. What do you think about it? And that moment, like I can very, very definitively point to that moment and say that that was a big game changer for me. And it kind of rewrote my whole philosophy on how I interact with my students, how I interact with um, you know, interdisciplinary professionals from, kind of the science and nuclear waste world. And even how I interact with my clients on the finance side, because, they're the ones that are inside their businesses every day. And while I have, the ins and outs of here's the really important things you can do operationally to get you the best results in your business, I also have to make sure that we bring them in on it too, and find the thing that works for them. Because if it doesn't work for them, they're not going to do it. Does that make
So,
sense?
yeah, it totally makes sense. That's a great story. So, let me ask you this. What is it that gets you up every day when that alarm clock goes off to do the work that you do at a high level, to change lives, make clients happy, and to also take care of your own soul? What's that energy every day for you?
That energy is me really putting a mission in the world because I genuinely believe in what we do with my martial arts school. We always say what we do is we show people how awesome they are through martial arts. Um, and that's true because I've seen this, I've gone through that same transformation a few times. I've seen my business partners go through it, and I've seen thousands of my students go through it over the years. Um, And honestly, it really is just about getting up and making things better because you see a lot of really crappy things in like the news outlets. And a lot of folks focus on the bad things and how bad they are without really talking about what's the step to make them better. And I think that's my energy is to get up and make the world better for my students, for my clients, and in order to show them that they're worth it too and that they're worth their own investment, I have to practice what I preach. And so a lot of what I do is targeted towards specific goals to make life better for me and my partner.
So, if you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and there was an old film projector next to that young version, and you hit play, and there was a 60-second highlight reel of the life that you've lived so far, would that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
Believe it? Probably not.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that it could be possible? Yeah. It's one of those, 18-year-old me said, okay, you're not gonna stay in the same generational poverty you came up in. You're not going to, the way out is education. And there are some twists and turns in my life where that philosophy has really gotten me where I am. But yeah, I think he would say it could be possible, but it wouldn't be a likely probability.
Would you have any advice?
Trust yourself.
Yeah.
Trust your gut. You know what's there. You know what's not. You know what's right. You know what's wrong. And when things change, it's okay.
Yeah. So, of everything that you've accomplished and evolved to at this point, what are you the proudest of?
I'm gonna say myself.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's not something I probably even would have said a year ago. Um, because I've gone I've gone through a PhD, launched a business, moved multiple times across the country, um, and always made it work. And when it wasn't working anymore, I found a way to change it, make it better, or make it work again.
So in the realm of business, there's all
Yeah,
these different tiers. There's employee happiness, there's customer satisfaction, having a good CEO, all of those things. You got your Amazons, your Apples. What's
yeah,
what's a business model? What's a company that exists in the world that you admire, top down for what they do?
that's a good one. Honestly, I would have to say Lego. I wasn't a Legos kid growing up, and honestly, like sitting down to build a Lego set is still not an enjoyable activity for me. But I will say they really lean into who they are. Um, one of my favorite examples is that they will have these top caliber engineers come in and through the interview process. And and the way that they interview is they sit down and they talk to these engineers as the engineers are just sitting there building a Lego set freestyle. And part of that is to look at it and go, you know, given just a whole bunch of pieces, what can they build? What kind of creativity can they explore? And honestly, with that example, like they're not looking for the right interview answers. You can tell that they're really trying to design around the right thought process given their fundamentals.
Yeah.
And and I love that when a company gets to be genuinely authentic. And and I think how you interview and select your team is one of the best indicators of how a company is successful.
I've often wondered about that because when I was a kid, it was like, yeah, Legos were Legos. They were around. They've really upped their game over the years and they've made huge scale models that people do time lapses of. They have stores and malls. There's always this level of them that keeps expanding because there's just some toys out there that have just stayed stagnant. They've just been the toy and they haven't really gone, like Tinker Toys and other things, but
Right.
they've really always upped their game.
Yes.
So.
It is a genuine like self-improvement. And I think there's a lot of power there because you can tell that not only are they willing to, you know, embrace what works, stay true to their foundation, but they're always looking to find that new innovation and that next step to go one level further than where they are now.
Yeah,
And that's hard to do because that sometimes requires letting go of what you've already been doing.
yeah. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, students, everyone that you work with, everyone that knows you in your different capacities. But you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm someone who's still learning. And and I hope that I always stay that way. I think if you're always learning, it shows a level of humility because I don't know everything. I'm always going to learn something new, and somebody always has an extra piece that I can add into what I do to make my processes better. You know, growth and learning it's a collaborative process. Even if you're sitting down and reading a book, that means someone had to write it. Um, and I think that's what I really love about it is that it's not that nothing's ever good enough or that nothing's ever done enough. It's that nothing's ever perfect.
Yeah.
And it never can be. But as you strive towards it, I think that's the beauty in a lot of things.
So let's say the Oklahoma Board of Tourism approaches you and they want to know what you like the best about living in Oklahoma City. What's your answer?
I love that Oklahoma City has the big city amenities. We have world-class restaurants with Michelin stars. We have, James Beard award-winning chefs. We have, um, but we also have a small town feel to it because while you're out and about, there's a strong likelihood you're going to run into somebody you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're on the north side of the city, if you're midtown, if you're on the west side of the city. Oklahoma City feels like a giant small town sometimes. And so it's that big city feel with a lot of that small town charm.
That's kind of the way Kansas City is. That would be an apt description for sure. So
Yeah.
If anybody wants to reach out, they want to dig in further in everything that you're doing, questions, hiring, any of the good business, where do they go?
Blackbeltledgers.com. That's my main website. They can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. Um, I'm still kind of working through some of the specifics for what the final offer is going to look like. But I'm really finding a home in the contractors space. So trades, roofers especially. We're seeing some insane results with my profit engineering program.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
I will put all these links in the show notes. Dan, wonderful to meet you. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time today. Best of
Yeah,
luck
you
with
too,
everything.
Joe.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
You bet. Thank you.